Imagine stepping outside tonight, gazing upward, and knowing that above your head, over 7,000 satellites trace invisible lines across the sky, each one pulsing with digital life. These aren't just scientific marvels or distant points of light. They are the backbone of a revolution, one promising to forever change the way our planet connects, works, and survives. But what if the very satellites meant to unite us are quietly setting off a chain reaction with consequences nobody, not even Elon Musk, can fully control? Just days ago, SpaceX's Falcon 9 thundered into the California sky, carrying the 11 to 16 batch of Starlink satellites, 23 more additions to the megaconstellation enveloping Earth. As the sun set over Vandenberg, the rocket's first stage soared and then, with astonishing precision, returned to land on the robotic drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, bobbing in the Pacific Ocean. This landing marked the 450th successful return for Falcon 9. On paper, it's just another number for SpaceX's record-breaking year. In reality, another brick laid in the building of a system that could either bridge the world's digital divide or unravel a delicate balance in our skies. Let's rewind. For most of history, where you were born dictated your access not just to knowledge but to economic opportunity, healthcare, even safety. The internet revolution changed everything, but only for half the world. In 2024, more than 2.7 billion people still live without reliable internet, condemned to the periphery as the rest of us race ahead. Then, with characteristic audacity, SpaceX declared its intention to put the internet truly for everyone, everywhere. The answer? Starlink, a mesh web of satellites in low Earth orbit, blanketing the planet with fast, uncensored connectivity. No more relying solely on fragile cables, costly cell towers, or indifferent governments. Whether you live in the windswept tundra of Alaska, the deserts of Australia, or a tiny island in the Pacific, all you need is an antenna and a clear view of the sky. It's a vision so powerful that competitors have scrambled to catch up. Amazon's Project Kuiper, OneWeb, China's Guowang. The space race is no longer about flags on the moon. It's about who owns the sky and controls the world's digital lifeblood. But what does it actually take to pull this off? Each Starlink satellite is a marvel of engineering, just 260 kilograms, solar-powered, bristling with phased array antennas. Launched 23 or 26 at a time atop reusable Falcon 9 rockets, they settle into low Earth orbits between 550 and 570 kilometers above the surface. At any given moment, thousands are zipping around at over 7 kilometers per second, forming a constantly shifting, invisible web. The numbers are staggering. In only 5 years, SpaceX has conducted over 450 successful Falcon 9 landings, with 63 launches in 2025 alone, nearly all to support Starlink. The network already numbers over 7,000 operational satellites, with plans for tens of thousands more. This scale dwarfs every previous satellite project in human history. But why is low Earth orbit so important? Traditional satellite internet used massive craft parked in geostationary orbit, 36,000 kilometers up. That meant slow speeds, laggy connections, and hefty costs. Starlink satellites, being so much closer, can deliver gigabit speeds with less than a tenth the delay. Users are already reporting video calls, online gaming, and remote work that feels, for the first time, nearly as fast as fiber, sometimes even faster, especially in remote regions where laying new cables is a pipe dream. Gwynne Shotwell, SpaceX's president, boldly predicts that Starlink speeds will soon hit 2 gigabits per second. She's not alone in the hype. Governments in Africa, Asia, and Latin America are lining up, hopeful that Starlink and its rivals will leapfrog countless villages and towns into the digital age. Imagine online schools for children in the Himalayas, remote diagnosis for patients on ships in the South Pacific, or a rural farmer selling crops directly to global markets, all made possible by a network you can't see, but which never sleeps. But here's where optimism collides with reality. Each rocket launch, while exhilarating, is just one move in a much larger and increasingly risky game. The more satellites we launch, the more tangled our skies become. It's not just the astronauts or astronomers raising a red flag. Dr. Hugh Lewis, a leading expert on orbital safety, warns, "The scale at which we are deploying satellites today is unprecedented. Managing the risk of collision and debris is already a massive challenge, and it's only going to grow." Space is vast, but the safe zone for these constellations is surprisingly narrow. Low Earth orbit is a cosmic highway only 400 to 1,200 kilometers thick. Cram thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of satellites into this corridor, and the odds of catastrophic collisions begin to rise. A single runaway crash could create shards of debris, each one lethal, zipping around at speeds that could slice through metal like butter. It's the infamous Kessler syndrome. Enough debris and a chain reaction could render low Earth orbit unusable for generations. But the risks aren't just theoretical. In March 2021, a Starlink satellite had to maneuver to avoid a close brush with a OneWeb craft. That was just one of over 25,000 recorded collision avoidance maneuvers last year. As more companies, and even governments, rush to fill the sky, the odds keep tilting. The economic stakes are enormous. A major debris incident could cripple everything from GPS and weather prediction to banking and defense. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that overnight, our entire global infrastructure is at the mercy of a field of frozen shrapnel. And then there's the environment. Joseph Wang, a prominent scientist, cautions that the accelerated deorbiting of satellites could release a yearly excess of more than 640% over the natural level of aluminum oxide particles into our ozone layer. Those particles reflect sunlight, potentially brightening the upper atmosphere while altering the chemistry that protects life below. What no one knows for certain is the long-term impact. Could billions of tiny satellites subtly change Earth's climate? The scale is so new, the models are incomplete. It's a gamble with the only biosphere we have. Yet the consequences are not confined to space or the atmosphere. Down here on Earth, astronomers are grappling with a galaxy of new problems. Each satellite isn't just invisible. It reflects sunlight, becoming a bright streak that can ruin priceless observations. SpaceX has begun experimenting with DarkSat and VisorSat technology to dim their satellites, but many scientists remain skeptical. Dr. Aparna Venkatasan, an astronomer, laments, "If left unchecked, these satellites could irreversibly alter our view of the cosmos." The commercial stakes are just as fierce. Starlink was first, but it's not alone. Amazon's Project Kuiper plans to deploy 3,236 satellites in its initial phase, leveraging its own deep pockets and logistics expertise. OneWeb is targeting global coverage with over 600 satellites, focusing on governments and businesses. China's Kuiper constellation, shrouded in secrecy, could become a geopolitical tool, extending Beijing's influence over swaths of the developing world. Even established players like Telesat and Eutelsat are racing to carve out their share. This new space race is about more than connection. It's about control. Who gets to write the rules for orbital traffic? Who decides where satellites can fly, what frequencies they use, and how to handle disputes? There is no global referee. The ITU, the main international body, is swamped by requests and often lacks the teeth to enforce real change. The US, China, Russia, and the EU all have conflicting interests and are wary of ceding power. Underneath it all, the original dream, bridging the digital divide, faces challenges of its own. Yes, Starlink brings internet to rural Alaska, but Christopher Ali, a scholar in communication policy, reminds us, the digital divide isn't just about the lack of technology, it's fundamentally about economic inequality and affordability. Starlink receivers are still expensive. Monthly fees, though falling, remain out of reach for many families in developing countries. If only the affluent can afford true global internet, does Starlink solve the divide or simply redraw its boundaries? Tim Farrar, a veteran telecom analyst, sees another technical hurdle ahead. Bigger satellites and more launches by themselves can't fix congestion, he warns. Without ultra-powerful launchers like Starship, even SpaceX might struggle to keep up with the insatiable demand for bandwidth, especially as customers expect more, not less, from their connections. Meanwhile, the hype continues. SpaceX is testing new satellite designs like DarkSat and VisorSat to address brightness. Plans are being floated for 25 Starship launches per year, each one capable of carrying dozens, even hundreds, of next-generation satellites. If they succeed, the cost of global internet could plummet, making access truly universal. But every step forward seems to uncover a new layer of complexity. As the sunlight fades behind the curve of the Earth and yet another Falcon 9 prepares for liftoff, the questions become unavoidable. Are we witnessing the greatest leap in human connectivity since the birth of the internet itself? Or are we, in our rush to connect every corner of the globe, stumbling blindly into a mess of orbital junk, environmental hazards, and unregulated chaos? If the dream of global satellite internet is to succeed, who will pay the true price? And what happens when the sky itself becomes the battlefield? So, With the stage set and thousands of satellites already crisscrossing the sky above, let's now look forward. The great Starlink leap wasn't meant to stop at 7,000 satellites. In fact, SpaceX has approval for over 30,000 in this megaconstellation, and other players like Amazon's Project Kuiper are racing to catch up. The real question isn't just what happens when every corner of the planet can access high-speed internet, but what new challenges and opportunities are waiting in the next decade. Imagine a world where a child in a Himalayan village can join a virtual classroom with students from Paris and Buenos Aires, or a doctor in a remote island receives real-time surgery guidance from a specialist halfway across the globe. This is the Starlink dream, and it's getting closer. SpaceX's Gwynne Shotwell predicts Starlink speeds could someday reach 2 gigabits per second, even in remote regions. But now, we must face the other side of this coin. As these satellites multiply, so do their shadows, literally. Astronomers already report streaks of light polluting their images. Amateur and professional skywatchers say cosmic wonder is being replaced by flashing grids. The sky, once a blank canvas for curiosity, now risks becoming a billboard, a network of moving points reflecting the ambitions and oversights of Earth below. And then, there's the invisible. The Earth's upper atmosphere was once the realm of meteors. Now it's becoming a graveyard. Every deorbiting satellite brings not only metal, but chemicals. Joseph Wang warns that within a decade, the amount of aluminum oxide released during satellite re-entry could exceed natural levels by over 600%. These particles aren't just harmless dust. They react in the ozone layer, potentially impacting the very shield that protects us from the sun's most dangerous rays. There's orbital congestion to account for, too. Hugh Lewis, a leading space debris researcher, has sounded alarms. It's not just the number of satellites that worries me. It's the exponential increase in collision probability. What happens if two megaconstellations have a bad day, or if a cascade of collisions, known as Kessler syndrome, starts to snowball? The worst-case scenario isn't just about losing internet. It's about losing access to the entire low Earth orbit, jeopardizing not only communications but scientific research, Earth observation, weather prediction, and even navigation for planes and ships. One chain reaction, and the very space infrastructure we rely on could become unusable for generations. Yet the pressure to launch more persists. Starlink's success is pushing competitors. Amazon's Project Kuiper, OneWeb, China's ambitious networks, each wants a piece of the orbital pie. The result? More satellites, more launches, and for now, even fewer checks and balances. Regulatory frameworks are patchy, a wild west above our heads. The United States, Europe, China, all have their own, often conflicting rules. International treaties lag decades behind. But let's step out of the doomsday spiral for a moment, because the very concerns we've highlighted are now driving some of the most innovative solutions in the space industry. In response to astronomers' concerns, SpaceX is developing special coatings, projects like DarkSat and VisorSat, to make their satellites less reflective. These are baby steps, but steps nonetheless toward a less intrusive network. Satellite deorbiting is also getting smarter. Companies are experimenting with magnetic tethers, drag sails, and autonomous thrusters to ensure that when a satellite's life ends, it doesn't linger above as a dangerous, tumbling husk. There is even talk of orbital garbage trucks, robots that will rendezvous with rogue debris, capturing and deorbiting them safely. In the regulatory realm, some momentum is building. The United Nations is revisiting its guidelines. National agencies, like the US FCC, are tightening the screws, mandating that satellite operators deorbit defunct satellites within 5 years instead of 25. But the challenge remains global, not national. Space, after all, belongs to no one and everyone. There's also a call for more transparency. Experts like Tim Farrar argue that open data on satellite positions and maneuvers, shared in near real time, could prevent accidents. Imagine a globally accessible, constantly updated traffic control system for space, a kind of orbital air traffic control. It's ambitious, but increasingly possible. Now, what does all this mean for you, the person watching this video, perhaps wondering if Starlink is worth buying for your countryside home, your camper van, or your fishing boat? First, the practical benefits are real. In regions where laying fiber optics is impossible or uneconomical, satellite internet offers not just connection, but opportunity. Telehealth, remote education, access to markets, emergency services, these are lifelines, often taken for granted in the city. For millions, Starlink and competitors will close the gap left by decades of neglect. But it's equally true that satellite internet isn't a silver bullet. Christopher Ali points out that the digital divide is not just about availability. Satellite can beam data, but if people can't afford it, the divide remains, he remarks. Affordability, digital literacy, and local infrastructure, power, devices, support, still make a difference. The promise of a borderless internet doesn't solve deep-seated social inequalities. It just moves the goalposts. And as a consumer, you may be part of the larger story. If you use Starlink, your dish is part of the world's most advanced internet relay. But you're also a stakeholder in a debate about the future of the sky. When you sign up, you buy not just a service, but a share in the dream, and yes, the responsibility. So, what can you do? For starters, stay informed. When new technologies arrive, they always bring side effects. Ask questions of the companies and of your representatives. Demand responsible practices and transparency. If you're in a rural community, use these services to maximize opportunity. Connect, learn, grow, and speak up about what works and what doesn't. Educators, community leaders, and policymakers have a role too. They can advocate for better regulations, smarter deployment, and fair access. They can push for subsidies, digital literacy programs, and upgrades to local power and IT infrastructure. Because universal connectivity isn't just about satellites, it's about making sure no one is left behind once they connect. On a personal note, next time you look up at the night sky and see moving points of light, remember, you're witnessing a grand experiment in real time. The choices we make now will echo for generations. The sky can be a bridge or a battleground. That's up to us. So let's return to our big question. How do we balance the world-changing dream of universal connectivity with the new hazards now hovering above our heads? The answer isn't simple, but it's not hopeless either. We need innovation, but also restraint. We need competition, but with collaboration. We need speed, but also wisdom. Regulators must close loopholes, update frameworks, and enforce international standards. The industry has to invest in debris management, dark sky protection, and affordable pricing. And society, meaning all of us, must keep the pressure on for ethical choices. Because when it comes to the future of space, apathy is the biggest risk of all. Starlink and its constellation siblings have already proven that the impossible is possible. Now the real test is whether we can connect not just our devices, but our sense of responsibility and stewardship. And here's a secret fact you might not know. The very first Starlink test satellites were so bright, they briefly became the third brightest objects in the night sky. That moment sparked an international outcry and forced SpaceX to rethink its entire approach to satellite design. The lesson? Public awareness and scientific activism can change the course of technology, even at the edge of space. So, as the satellites rise, so should our voices. We're not just users of the sky, we're its caretakers. If you found this deep dive eye-opening, make your voice heard. Share this video with friends, ask your community how space technology can help, and support scientists and policymakers pushing for smarter, safer, and fairer space for all. Subscribe for more untold stories of technology shaping our future. And the next time you see a streak of light above, remember, it's not just